cause these cilia. When the basilar membrane vibrates, okay, it's going to cause these cilia, or stereocilia, to bend. When they're displaced, then these cells are going to generate an impulse which is carried by the vestibulocochlear nerve. Okay? Now, the type of impulse that's generated depends upon where along this cochlear duct that these cilia are bent, which is a direct reflection of the pitch of the sound. Okay? So it says the organ of Corti sits on the basilar membrane and contains cochlear hair cells. When these cells push against the overlying pictorial membrane, the result is transmission of nerve impulses along the cochlear nerve. Okay? Again, you see these branches of the cochlear nerve associated with the basolateral membrane of these cells. So that as their hairs along the apical surface move or displaced, it's going to trigger impulses that travel down those afferent fibers. You see it happening here. Again, the pitch of the sound will determine where along the cochlear duct that this vibration occurs. These are the hair cells that we're referring to. Okay, when patients become deaf, there are two types of deafness that we refer to. Conduction deafness is the type of deafness where sound waves are blocked from reaching the organ of Corti. For example, if any of you have ever had cerumen impacted within your external auditory canal, where you've had to go to ear doctor and he's flushed out your ears, or maybe he's taken a little instrument and removed the wax, that's a conductive hearing loss, where sound simply doesn't reach the organ of Corti. Or otosclerosis, which is a condition that occurs with aging, where the bones, the ossicles, become thickened and more fused. They vibrate less. That's conductive hearing loss, where there's less transmission of the sound to the organ of Corti. On the other hand, sensory neural hearing loss is caused by damage to the neural structures, either the organ of Corti or to the vestibulocochlear nerve. Okay? These neural structures can be damaged by long-term exposure to loud noises. So for instance, if you like to go to concerts and they play music really, really loud, that can damage your ears. Okay. This shows a cross-section, by the way, through the cochlear. Here's the scala vestibuli, this is the scala tympani, and this is the organ of Corti here within the cochlear duct. All of this that surrounds the cochlea, this is all bone. Okay? This is the tube within the tube. This is the cochlear duct, which is filled with endolymph. Whereas here, the scala vestibuli and scala tympani, they're filled with perilymph. Okay? So here, if we took a cross-section through the cochlea, you would see all three of these chambers. Now, just as this cochlear is filled with fluid, so are the semicircular canals. And with rotational movement, that fluid moves. And it triggers displacement of cilia, or stereocilia, along the apical surface of the hair cells. So it allows us to detect rotational forces, rotational movement. Okay, we talked about otitis media, it's an infection of the middle ear. An otoscope is used to examine the ear. One thing you should also be aware of is just as the middle ear is continuous with the nasopharynx, it's also continuous with the mastoid air cells, the cells that line the inside of the mastoid process. And so oftentimes a child, if they have a middle ear infection, it can be complicated by a mastoiditis as the infection spreads to air cells within the mastoid process. Okay, that's all we're going to talk about with respect to the ear. Again, it's not a very long read. If you look at those pages in the book, it'll help clarify the information. It's very difficult to talk about the ear. For me, it's very difficult because it requires visualization of a lot of images, of pictures. And your books have those pictures, where you can look at the pictures and fully understand the concept of the tube within the tube, the membranous structure within a bony structure. Okay, so that completes the information you need to know for the test.
I just have a quick question.
Yes.
It's like slightly related, but just also for my personal information. Have you like heard those like really high-pitched dog whistles
Yeah,
that like some people can't hear?
right.
Would that be an example of autosclerosis?
No. It's just that dogs can hear within a different range than humans.
No, but like when you're like really, really young, because like my sister could hear it and I could hear it, but my grandparents couldn't hear it.
You know, it depends on the frequency of the sound.
Okay.
You know, it may have been within the limits of that, you know, young person's hearing range.
Mm-hmm.
But the hearing range, in terms of the, you know, that resonance of the basal membrane is different from a human for a dog.
Okay.
I was in a physics class and we like really went into this, like we had to build instruments and everything for sound. My teacher said that sometimes when you get older you lose like hair cells. Is that true?
You know,
Because you said that sometimes when people get older, some of the hearing loss might be loss of like hair cells, so some frequencies might not resonate as well.
yeah, what happens in general as we age,